immediately felt not only the presence of a great leader, but of a brother. I served before coming here as what we would call Chief Minister, I guess, in India of Los Angeles, a famous place that you know because of Hollywood. You might know it because of some of the art and music and movies we've produced. But it's also where the first goods came overseas to start the first flight here over the hump into China. In fact, it was in Los Angeles, which was an industrial base that was manufacturing aircraft, that was producing the fuel, and so much more of what the world needed to fight evil in the 1940s. So it's a fitting metaphor that I come from Los Angeles here in the same way that some 80 plus years ago, that same voyage was taken by brave pilots and sailors who came here. And I want to thank the Chief Minister for the way that he has taken me in as a brother, as a friend. I know what the burden of leadership feels like when you have to run a state. And I think that Arunachal Pradesh and that India is lucky to have you leading. So thank you very much. And thank you to our Chief Secretary as well. I'm so honored to be here with Colonel Hess and Colonel Cooper, who may be the first men in uniform in this state from the United States military since tens of thousands of servicemen and the women that supported them served here. And I just want to say what an honor it is for both of you to be here and for me to serve alongside. Thank you, Colonels Hess and Cooper as well. We come here today not just to mark history, but to make history. To see the ways in which each one of us is called not just to witness the past, but to do something to change the future. And I want to thank this entire community and the vision that it took to build a museum since 2016, I believe it was, when this vision first came forward. And when you think through what Oken and this team have put forward, this isn't just a gift for Arunachal Pradesh. It isn't just a gift for the families whose lives will be affected by being able to come here. It is a gift to India and to the world. And I saw with my own eyes that this isn't just a museum in some remote part of India, halfway around the world from the United States. This is a world-class museum already in its opening day. So congratulations, Oken, and to Aramban and the entire team that has made this happen. We're here today because the events that occurred during World War II, when the Japanese army blocked the Burma Road, the major supply artery for Allied forces in Asia. The only way we knew to provide troops in China with life-saving supplies was to take to the skies. One of the dramatic things about this state is you're almost at its lowest point at sea level, and at its highest point, almost at the highest point on the face of the earth, in a single state. We talk about the friendship between the United States and India as something that stretches now from the seabed to the stars. In fact, yesterday we welcomed the head of our NASA space agency, Bill Nelson, to New Delhi, and had Indian and American space visionaries talking about how this coming year we, as Americans, will take a brilliant Indian and lift him into the sky to the International Space Station from an agreement that President Biden and Prime Minister Modi made. This relationship between India and the United States, though, predates even modern India. Because when we saw how India and Indians stepped up, even before their own independence, to fight for the freedom of everyone, how could we not? In fact, it was President Roosevelt who advocated to the British that India and Indians had to be free. How can we not today see and not feel the generosity that literally saved lives, families who are alive today because of what residents of Arunachal Pradesh did to save those men. Today, how can we not but step up to be a great friend to India, to recognize her borders, all of them, and to respect them, and to call on the world to do the same. To see the way that our defense partnership has grown to new heights, to see the way that our people-to-people ties that train future museum directors, that give opportunities for journalists to travel to the United States and vice versa to come to India, to see the 4 Ps, as I call them, of peace, prosperity, our planet, and our people, that define the principles that we share as the 2 largest democracies in the world. But back on this route, this one that started here first in Assam, then up to Arunachal Pradesh, Tibet, Myanmar, and ended in China. We know, and we had a moment of silence outside, for all those who were lost. And it is one of the cruelties of war that whenever you count the fallen, you see just how young they were, how much of their life was still awaiting them. India knows that from its war fallen, and we know that in the United States from the war that took too many of our young men and women. Flying over the tallest mountains in the world, burning so much fuel that 3/4 of the fuel they were delivering was burned just to get there, and 4 trips would have to provide enough fuel for 1 plane to be able to take off in China to resist the Japanese. Slow and heavy and weighed down with cargo, planes like the Douglas C-47, converted B-24s, flew like lumbering bricks against an unforgiving terrain, blasts of wind unlike any other in the world, with poor maps, with limited navigation, with their own eyes and whatever was available. They hung on to hope. And one of the most moving things I just saw in the museum was a letter from one man who worked here in the hump. It sounds like he was a maintenance person, writing his wife, wondering, whether he would make it back. There was nowhere to land, there was nowhere to go but onward, to push with courage and with commitment. And their actions made a significant difference, not just for a country, not just for an alliance, but for the world. And it is a lesson for us today, that when we stand together as friends, when we stand for principles like democracy and freedom, and we stand against ideologies that seek to keep people down, that nothing can stop the human spirit. The supplies saved countless lives, 650,000 tons of fuel, food, and ammunition. My grandfather was an immigrant from Mexico who came to the United States as a baby when his father was killed in war during the Mexican Revolution. He was carried by my great-grandmother, who, when I look at the pictures in this museum, remind me of many of the men and women who saved lives. She was a native Mexican who lived in the hills of the Mexican state of Chihuahua, from a native tribe called the Tarahumara. Maybe you've read stories about them. They are the great barefoot runners, some of the best runners in the world who run in the mountains with no shoes on. And she carried her son, my grandfather, over the border to come to the United States. He wasn't accepted as a citizen, but for 20 years he lived in the United States. A humble man, he was a barber, and he volunteered in World War II to join the Allied forces and to fight in the Pacific Theater. And he came to the Pacific Theater here, not in India, but in the Philippines. As a result of that, he became a citizen of the United States, and his grandson today is standing before you as the United States ambassador to that country. When that courage steps forward, when the compassion that we saw in the hills reaches out its hands, history changes forever. But we also know that some of the stories don't end with a happy ending. It's 600 to 700 planes that were lost, those who are still unaccounted for today. But we as Americans, and I know you as Indians, think that nobody should ever be left behind. And if it's too late, their memory should never be left behind. And that's why our Defense POW/MIA Accounting Agency, known as the DPAA, returned to India annually with one goal: to recover the remains of those missing in action and to reunite them with their families for burial in their home country. I can't say strongly enough how grateful we are to the government of India, to our dear friends who know that our war dead means something to you, to us, and to this world. And we're grateful for the partnership of the Indian state, and I want to thank the government of Arunachal Pradesh in particular, who has stepped up to not only make this museum a reality, but to make those journeys possible. The local officials, guides like Oken and others who help us get there and realize our shared history. In closing, let me quote a poem that has always moved me by Robert Browning, who once wrote that a man's reach must always exceed his grasp. A man's reach must always exceed his grasp. What does that mean? It means we reach for things that we don't think maybe we can hold. Maybe it's the building of a new dam. Maybe it is the museum that you wonder if anybody will support. Maybe it's a trip up into the hills that changes your life forever. Maybe it's somebody who's 20 years old getting behind or getting into the cockpit of a plane he's barely flown and told to go fly over the most difficult terrain anywhere in the world to try to save freedom. And the second line of that poem, after it says, a man's reach must always exceed his grasp, says, after all, what else is heaven for? And today we see that glimpse of heaven here in the footsteps of the Himalayas that reach up to touch the heavens. That down here on earth see the bravery and the persistence of human beings who tell the story and capture the memory of the past in order that we can mark that history, but today make that history for generations to come. God bless you for what you have done. Thank you for the honor of letting me join you here today, and may the memory of our fallen live on and be a blessing forever. Thank you.